Well, hello and welcome to this episode of the Terri Cole Show. As always, I'm super psyched to see you. So, if you have been watching and or listening to the podcast or on YouTube or on at terricole.com, you know that we've been talking quite a bit about families, family systems, family roles. And this week, sort of the big kahuna of messed up family roles, which is the narcissistic family system. So, I'm giving you lots of information in this episode. I think I called it Scapegoat, Golden Child, and More, How to Identify and Heal from Narc Family Roles. So, we want to heal from those family roles, but so much of the time, this stuff is unconscious, covert. We don't even know. Because how do we know what is normal if what we've experienced is all we know? So what I want to give you today is a whole bunch of information, and I will create some sort of checklists so that rather than sorting through everything I'm talking about, if you want to just download the little cheat sheet, you'll be able to see like, oh, these are what goes on in a narc family. These are the things that go on, and these are the roles that we play. So a couple of weeks ago, I think it was the May 27th episode of the Terri Cole Show, we talked about dysfunctional families and like, what does that entail? You will see that there is some crossover, but narcissistic family systems are a really specific type of dysfunction. So where do they cross over, right? Because all dysfunctional families, we all have this unspoken set of rules. Right? So we learn as kids in whatever kind of family we're in to abide by those rules so we don't get into trouble, especially in a narcissistic family system, because the narc is the center of all things and they can be super cruel and mean. And you learn very quickly, because we're very adaptive as children, how to do our very best to avoid the wrath. I also spoke last week in the episode, if you haven't watched it or listened to it, please do, about sort of family roles in addicted family systems. And again, you will see some crossover with the narcissistic family system, but there are some things that are extremely unique to the narc system, which we'll be hitting today. So what are some of the rules in a narcissistic family system that are kind of the same, or some of the behaviors that we agree to? Well, secrets, okay, so we know that in all dysfunctional families. The narc family is really interested in things looking good. They want it, they're more interested in what it looks like, of course, than what it is, because under the surface, it's like a rotting mess of bullshit, but nobody knows that. It's about what does it look like to the neighbors. Also, kids are given a lot of negative messages about who they are and what they are. Basically, it's all about you don't measure up. So there's a lot of compare and despair from the parents to the children, comparing them to other people, comparing them to each other. But of course, it's all about the insecurity of the narcissist. Why be so concerned about what other people think? If you know who you are, you're way less concerned about that. But of course, the narc, the flip side of the narc, or the underbelly of a narcissist, is someone who has a very, very delicate, fragile sense of self with no real internal emotional moderation, right? They can't do it. They flip out at the second they feel injured. They're super thin-skinned. You know this. We'll get into this a little bit later. There's also this inability to be dialed in to children. So if you have had a narc parent, you know this. They're not dialed into. They don't the nuances of a child and what they're going through, since they really are incapable of having empathy or sympathy in a real way. They're not dialed into it. They don't get what's going on. Another fact that is present in a narc home is messed up communication. So there's really no full-on communication, because nobody is talking about what is real. The narcissist lives in a world of their own, a lot of self-aggrandizing, a lot of exaggerating their accomplishments, and they really do expect that everyone else will dial into that, and you better dial into their reality of themselves. But there's no direct communication. There's all kinds of triangulation in a narcissistic family system, and there's all kinds of passive-aggressive ways of communicating. Another indication of this type of a system is really crappy boundaries, blurred boundaries. It's almost like children don't feel and are not important in a narc family system. They're important for narcissistic supply, so for the narcissist to get what they need. And we're going to get into how the roles play into that and how they pit the kids against each other. It's just so incredibly unhealthy. I can't stand it. There's also no right to privacy. So if the narcissist wants to know something, they feel like they have every right to read your journal, to go into your room, to do whatever it is they want. It's like they're the only person to be considered in this system. Oh, it's just so depressing. And you may have where one person is a narcissist, but the other parent, basically their whole life is trying to keep the narcissist happy. So what does that mean? Well, that means that nobody is there being able to care about what's happening with the children. So you have this focal point, and when we get into the roles, we'll talk about that. Also, the sibling rivalry thing is completely encouraged. It's just so mean. In a healthy family system, my mother used to always say to us, because my family moved a lot, not really when I was younger, but when my older sisters, because I'm the youngest, were, and she would always say, your sisters are your best friends. You have built-in best friends. Your sisters are your best friends. And she wouldn't really tolerate us tattling on each other. She would say, work it out. Work it out. That's your job, to work it out. But remember, your sisters are your best friends. So I didn't have that experience growing up where I was being pitted against my own siblings. Not with school stuff, not with anything. And it is so painful to have a parent setting up this dysfunctional, unhealthy, and painful scenario, because siblings can be your best friends. They can be the closest people. And it really is on the parents to allow that. But also, the parents need to not be the center of the universe. And when a narcissistic parent pits them against each other, they're still like in the middle. They can't stand for anything to be happening without them. So that sucks, but that's also part of it. Another thing is nobody talks about feelings. You can't. They don't know how, so nobody does it. And obviously there's lots of dysfunction. So we've established sort of what are the, what goes on in that kind of a home, a narcissistic home. But let's move into what are the roles and who are the players. Julia Hall is a really brilliant writer about this. She writes, what was it called? It was called like, the Narcissist Files or something. I'll put a link in the show notes for this, or in the blog for it, because I find her work so fascinating about this. And I was looking it up before, and I don't even think she's a psychotherapist, but some people become, of course, experts for their own reasons in different areas. So she talks about this, and I liked it. I liked the way she spoke about it, so I figured I would share it with you guys, about the way that you can look at a narcissistic family system the way you would the cast of a play, right? So who do you have? And keep in mind that most family systems, if they are narcissistic, that we can come up with the roles, because even when the families are so different, the roles are so similar. And this has been over research over the past 2 decades where the roles are so similar. So you figure out the narcissist, right? That person is the center of the world. So you got to figure out this family system is basically run by a tyrant. That is what a dictator, that is what a narcissist basically is, and how they work in this system. So if we look at the roles themselves, we start with who is the center of the world. That is the narcissist, obviously. So we're going to say that they're like the star of the show. And the way that they behave, if they really have narcissistic personality disorder, what do? They blame, they shame, they guilt, they compete. That's where you can really see super unhealthy parents compete with their children. You're like, okay, the most unnatural thing in the world, but it happens all the time. What else did I do? The gaslight, which means they try to make you think you're crazy. If you don't know what that is, I did a popular video, blog, podcast on that. And they really terrorize people. They deny your reality. They are huge boundary bullies. So we're just establishing together this type of behavior. This is the way that a narcissist acts towards other people in the group, because what is their whole trip is to manipulate and control. That's their whole trip, because that's how they can continue to get what is called their narcissistic supply. And sadly, a lot of times that is drama, pain, and suffering of others. Like, it's so sick, but that is what it is. And getting their very, very fragile ego filled. Having someone who agrees with them that they're brilliant and that they're so above others. They believe that they should only interact with others of this super special status. I remember working years ago, I was working, like I had a person who was another psychotherapist, and she was telling me about a client that she had who was kind of a B actor at the time, and how this person was such a narcissist that she would, they would tell her stories about calling the hotel and making sure that everything was special for them. And she's yelling at her assistant, "Did you tell them who I am? Do they know who I am?" And you're like, well, if you know who you are, those words will most likely never leave your lips. Make sense? Because if you know who you are, you don't need to make sure that other people, quote unquote, know your special status. Oh man, that is brutal. So who's the first role, the first player in the narcissist family system play? Well, the enabler, right? So that is, a lot of times it's the other parent. And so what are they doing? They're killing themselves to support the narcissist's belief of who they are, right? What they think they deserve. And they get really sucked in. Like, you can actually get really addicted to this cycle of abuse with a narcissist. So the cycle, it goes from you're so special, you're amazing, you're great, I love you, to then you fall out of favor, you're terrible, you're horrible, you're disgusting, all the meanest things. And then when they need you to come back, it comes back. And, cycles are different for every system. So it could be, that could happen once a week, that could happen once a month, or once a year, depending on how long you've been with the person. But they're like the handler, so to speak, for the narcissist. They kind of apologize for it, and they're trying not to be attacked, but they're seeking to get positive feedback from the narc, and they do sometimes, because this is the way the narcissists can control you, right? If you never ever got a need met, but it's always dangling the carrot of something, and most likely, most of the time, that is not, may or may not actually come through, but it'll never last. That's the part that you have to get with the narcissist, that the good stuff is never going to last. It's always going to turn into crap eventually. So let's move into the next role. And you may have heard this before, this phrase, flying monkeys. So this refers to, remember in The Wizard of Oz, that Wicked Witch of the West, she had those flying monkeys. Remember how scary they were? If you're American, you do. If you're from another country, you may not. But they're basically kids in the family system who are carrying out the wants and needs of the narcissist. And that includes basically bullying whoever is chosen to be the scapegoat role, which we're going to get to, so don't worry. But so they're sort of the most easy to manipulate people in the family system. And they can turn out to be narcissists themselves in life later on, The next role is the golden child. And a lot of times people think that this is like the good role, like you got everything role. Yeah, nobody gets everything in a home of a narcissist where the shit is being run by a tyrant. Nobody gets everything. And I find in my therapy practice over the many years where I've treated people who've been in all different roles in a narcissistic family system, that the golden child, it's really brutal, because the narc is, giving them tons of props and praise to the golden child, right? Even if they haven't done anything to earn it, which is really bad for the self-esteem of anybody. If you have parents who are like, you're amazing, you're the best, you deserve everything, but you haven't done anything in life, or you're not doing the right things in life, that is a very mixed message. And you don't believe it. It actually creates terrible self-esteem in that person. So, the golden child is basically doing all of the things similar to the hero child that I talked about last week with the roles in the family system, where it's bringing positive attention. So that role gets positive attention, but it's friggin' exhausting. So there is definitely a cost. And for some, it's like your childhood is the cost. You're so busy over-functioning and overachieving so that the narc can take credit for your accomplishments, basically. And they see you, the golden child is seen as basically an extension of the narcissistic parent. And that sucks too, because there's no self-identity. But for anyone in a narcissistic family system, there is so much denial and projection and triangulation going on that nobody is in a great position to actually develop a solid sense of self. You really need to get out of that system to do that. The person who will do it the most, though, will probably be the scapegoat, which is similar to an addictive family system we talked about last week, where what is the scapegoat? That's usually one of the kids that the narc has chosen who's going to be the punching bag for the narc, and we're gonna blame all the family problems, anything that is ego dystonic, right? Ego doesn't match the way that the narc wants to and does see themselves. They're going to blame that on the scapegoat. So that's pretty depressing to be in that position. But a lot of times the scapegoat is the most vocal in the family system. They're the ones who are telling the truth about what they are seeing, same thing in the addicted system, which then makes them more of a target for abuse from everybody, from the flying monkeys, so the other siblings who have been chosen to be in that role. And in the addicted family system we talked about last week, everyone else, that person is acting out the veiled feelings of the entire group. I mean, sometimes in family systems, the scapegoat, especially if there are multiple kids, the scapegoat role can be shifted, and the golden child too, but not as much. The golden child is usually pretty consistent. And I feel like in my own therapy practice, what I've noticed is that the scapegoats actually escape more than the golden children, right? Than the golden child role players. Because they're already, what do they have to lose? Get me the hell out of here, because I'm already not getting anything that I want from this friggin' messed up place. So, so those are basically the roles in a narcissistic family system. There's so much on this topic and so much to talk about, but I can't put it all in one episode. So I wanted to just be able to cover this so that what this episode is about you being able to recognize. So I'm going to give you basically checklists so that you can identify if you had this experience. So did you come from a narcissistic family system? Because that's the beginning. And what role did you play? Because knowledge is power. And I don't want you to lose hope that if this was your experience, I promise you, there is a way to be in recovery from this experience. But as everything that I teach on all my platforms, we have to take this first step. And that first pillar of transformation, according to Terri Cole, is what? Self-awareness. So I hope that this episode of the Terri Cole Show did serve to raise your awareness. And I will be giving you more information about narcissists as we go along. And again, I actually covered this because someone wrote an email into support@terricole.com and asked me to. So if there is a topic that you would like me to cover that you are interested in, I am happy to do so. Really, you guys are it for me, right? Who am I doing this for? You, because it's stuff I already know, or it inspires me to find out. Sometimes it's stuff I don't know. There are always people who are more expert than I am, and I love to learn. So this really turned me on to a whole bunch of other people, and I'll give you those references in the show notes and the blog. So if this helped you in any way or was interesting, please share it on your social media platforms and help me spread the positive world domination. That is what I am looking for. I hope that you guys have an amazing week diving deep into this topic. And as always, take care of you.